My name's Daniel, and this happened about 2 years ago when I was living in Pennsylvania. I still think about it sometimes, especially when I'm staying somewhere unfamiliar. I had just started a new job at a marketing company, and during the first couple of weeks, I was trying to get to know everyone. One of the guys in the office, Ryan, was a few years older than me and seemed pretty chill. He was the kind of guy who joked with everyone and always had some story about traveling or hiking somewhere. We started talking during lunch breaks and realized we both liked camping and being outdoors. After maybe 3 weeks of working together, Ryan mentioned that he was planning a quick weekend camping trip up in the mountains and asked if I wanted to go. He said a couple of his friends might join too. I didn't have any plans that weekend, and honestly, it sounded like a good way to get out of the city for a bit, so I said sure. Friday afternoon after work, Ryan picked me up in his truck. I had my backpack, a sleeping bag, and some basic camping gear. We stopped at a gas station on the way out of town and grabbed snacks and a couple of six-packs of beer. During the drive, he told me the campsite was in a more remote part of the state forest, somewhere he'd been before. The drive took almost 3 hours, and as we got farther out, the roads got darker and emptier. I asked him at one point where his other friends were meeting us, and he kind of shrugged and said they might show up later that night or the next morning. That was the first moment something felt a little off, but I brushed it off. Not everyone is good at planning. Eventually, we turned down this narrow gravel road that cut through thick woods. After another 15 minutes, we reached a small clearing with a fire pit and space for a couple of tents. There were no other campers around. No lights, no cars, nothing. Ryan seemed completely comfortable though. He parked the truck, hopped out, and started setting up his tent like he'd done it 100 times. We built a fire, cracked open some beers, and just sat there talking. For the most part, the night was normal. The forest was quiet except for crickets and the occasional sound of wind moving through the trees. After a while, we both turned in. I set up my sleeping bag inside my tent and fell asleep pretty quickly. Sometime during the night, I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. Everything was completely silent. The fire had burned down to embers and the woods were pitch black. Then I heard it. Footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, moving across the gravel near the fire pit. At first, I assumed it was Ryan getting up to use the bathroom or something, but the footsteps kept circling the tents, not walking away, just circling. I stayed completely still in my sleeping bag, listening. Crunch, crunch, crunch. After a minute, the footsteps stopped right outside my tent. I could see the faint outline of someone through the thin fabric, just standing there. I whispered Ryan's name, thinking maybe he was messing with me. No response. Then the shadow slowly crouched down. I felt my chest tighten. Whoever it was, they were now right next to my head on the other side of the tent wall. I could hear breathing. Not loud, just slow and steady. That's when I noticed something else. Ryan's zipper was still fully closed. I could see it from where I was laying, which meant whoever was outside my tent wasn't him. The figure stayed there for what felt like forever, just crouched beside the tent. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. Then suddenly the person stood up and walked away. The footsteps moved back toward the fire pit and then disappeared into the woods. I lay there frozen for the rest of the night. When the sun finally started coming up, I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. Ryan was already awake, sitting on a cooler and drinking a bottle of water like nothing had happened. I asked him if he had gotten up during the night. He looked confused and said no. I told him I heard someone walking around the campsite. He stared at me for a second and then said something that made my stomach drop. He said he heard the footsteps too, but he assumed they were coming from my tent. We looked around the clearing together. There were footprints in the dirt around the fire pit and between the tents. Bare footprints, like someone had been walking around without shoes. The prints led from the tree line, circled our campsite multiple times, and then went straight back into the woods. Neither of us said much after that. We packed up our gear and left within 15 minutes. About 20 minutes down the road, we passed an old ranger station. Ryan pulled over and went inside to ask if anyone else had been camping in that area. The ranger listened to the story and then got very quiet. He told us that part of the forest had been closed off at night the year before after several campers reported someone wandering through campsites in the dark. No one ever caught who it was. The strangest part, though, was what he said next. Every group that reported the same thing described the exact same detail. Whoever was out there never tried to steal anything. They never attacked anyone. They just walked around the tents for hours, just watching people sleep.